Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So in this video I will be sharing two stories with you guys. The first story is more of a traveling journey type of story of how I got to Europe. The second story is me in the city and getting lost. And the stress from the first story kind of leads to the second story. This story starts last year. I decided to do a summer study abroad program in the city of Bremen, Germany, which is the small town in northwest Germany. It's a very beautiful place, and I just absolutely fell in love when I went there. But before I got on the trip, I found out that from my university there was only 10 people going. My university kind of did this thing where since only a couple students were going, they decided to have us travel at our own times. So instead of, all of us going together, people would travel at different times. Some students would leave early, explore Europe, and then get to the city, and other students would, get to Bremen and then they would stay a couple weeks extra and explore Europe. So for me, this was the first international trip in 12 years. So I wanted to travel with a group because the last time I went abroad, I was in London and I was 8 years old. And, like when your parents are around, they take you everywhere. So this was the first time for me that I traveled outside of the country by myself. So I traveled with two other people. I traveled with this guy, we're gonna call him Dustin. I'm not gonna use any real names. And I also traveled with this girl. We're gonna call her roommate because she was my roommate throughout the trip. I also traveled with a third person. I didn't know this person was traveling with us until I got to the airport. He wants to be called Y Dot, so we're gonna call him Y Dot. So I traveled with these three people. Our itinerary was we went from the US to Amsterdam, and then from Amsterdam we took a train to Bremen, except Y Dot. He decided to take a plane, which I probably should have as well, and then you'll know why. So when we took off, we had like a 8 p.m. flight. It was like a night flight, and we were supposed to arrive at Amsterdam at like 8 a.m. or something like that. And like I mentioned before, this was the first time I traveled in like 12 years. I completely forgot that I don't sleep on planes, and I didn't sleep at all throughout the 8 to 9 hour flight. So once we arrived at Amsterdam, it was around 8 a.m. in the morning. We had a 6 hour layover before me and Dustin and roommate took our train, and Y Dot took his plane. I still don't know why he wants to be called Y Dot, but okay. At this point, like I mentioned, I am extremely exhausted, and we just want to explore Amsterdam because it's a very beautiful city. A lot of people want to visit it, and so we all went downstairs at the airport, and we in the storage area we all spent like 15 to 30 euros to make sure that our bags were in storage while we went out to go visit the city so that we can come back, get our bags, and then travel or whatnot. As soon as we all put our bags downstairs and we got up, homeboy Dustin decides to tell us, hey, let's not go outside, we're at the airport, this is the safest place we can be. And he starts to talk kind of like a mom. At that point, I feel really weird tension between my roommate and Y Dot in the sky, and I started to feel really awkward. My roommate got very pissed, and she made a statement like, oh well, this is how the trip's gonna be. And the other guy, he was just pissed off. I could tell he did not like him, and I was sitting there awkwardly like, I paid 30 euros, why can't we just visit the city? But this started to add a little bit of stress. So I'm telling details of the story because all of this adds to the breakdown that I had at the end of the day. And when you travel, this happens often, especially with people that you don't know very well. it's always good to like get to know someone before you travel with them. So fast forward 6 hours later, we were getting ready to go on a train. There was like a train, like a subway, metro link type of thing. Me, roommate, and Dustin decided to get to the train station. So we went downstairs where the metro tram thingy is, and we were getting ready to like get on a tram. Keep in mind, this is the airport, so it's extremely busy. And when the doors open, they're only open for about 10 to 15 seconds, and it's like extremely crowded. So once the doors open, we like rush in to get in my big like check-in bag. Like, I think something happened with the wheel of the bag. My bag fell, and once I picked it up, I looked up, the doors closed, and at that point I freaked out. I was just like, oh my goodness, I like missed my tram. And then the guy who was working there, he's like, oh, don't worry, another one will come in 2 minutes, you'll be fine. The next one comes, I get to the train station, and I take my ticket out. Instead of looking for the signs, I decided to ask people where to go, which is sometimes not a good idea. Before this, I hadn't really been in a train station. If I had, it just had like two stations, if that makes any sense. But anyway, so I asked this girl, I'm like, hey, this is my ticket, where am I supposed to go? She points me to the end of the train station. I look over and I don't see any trains, and I'm like, okay, let me ask somebody who works here. So I went to the gift shop, I showed the lady my ticket, I was like, where am I supposed to go? She also points me to that direction. So I just was like, oh, okay, it must be there. Once I get in, like I said, I don't see any trains, so I'm just like, where am I supposed to go? So I went up the escalators, and everything in Europe is kind of small, and my bag was really big, so trying to get my bag up that escalator was like a hot mess. But anyways, I get up there, I look around, and again, I don't see any trains. All I see are buses and cars. So at this point, I'm just like, where am I going? What's happening here? So I get downstairs and I look at the time. I have less than 20 minutes before my train takes off, and everything in Europe is like on time. So I start to like freak out. Sorry, my like nose is itching. So I started to like freak out a little bit. So I find this guy who also works there, but he has like this uniform thing on. So I look at him and I'm just like, I think he can help me. So I show him my ticket and I was just like, where am I supposed to go? He looks at my ticket. He goes, no, 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 no. You're supposed to go all the way on the other side of the train station. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, two people pointed me here. One of them even works here, and clearly she just, ugh, I was just so pissed. I started to run to the other side. I started to like Usain Bolt to the other side of the train station. And once I got up the escalators, I asked this guy who was working there. He looked like a train conductor. I asked him, I was just like, hey, this is my ticket, where am I supposed to go? He's like, it's this train. At that point, I just got on the train. It was like the end of the train, and because I'm an idiot, I paid for first class tickets, which was all the way on the other side of the train, but I was just like, I may not make it, so let me just get in here. So I get into the train, I'm just like, finally, I can sit and I can relax. Also, another very important detail to keep in mind, I did not have any international data, which is not good. I thought I wouldn't need it because my brother went to Europe that summer and he didn't have it, but like, I'm on my phone all the time, so I should have just had it. And during this time, the other two people were texting me, telling me the number of the train, and I didn't get any of their messages because, my Wi-Fi wasn't working. I was trying to connect with them the whole time, but I couldn't for obvious reasons. So once I sat on the plane, I made a really huge mistake of calling my parents and telling them exactly what happened, which you shouldn't do because now every time I tell them I want to travel, they're like, what about the day you got lost? And I'm just like, that was one day. Once I got on the train, I decided to finally get some rest because, like I said, I didn't sleep for like over 24 hours. So I put my phone for like a 1 hour timer because I did have a stop at Osnabrück. So I put my phone at a timer and I ended up waking up. Once I woke up, the train stopped in the middle of nowhere. All I see is grass, everything looks pretty, everything looks nice, but I'm just like, why is the train stopped at the middle of nowhere? What's going on? I hear the train conductor talking outside to someone else, and then he gets inside. He's like, everyone get off the train, and I'm just like, what's happening here? Like, is there a fire? What's going on? So we all leave the train. And then the guy's like, no, 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 get your bags, you're moving to this train. I started to panic because I was also traveling with two other people and I didn't know if they were moving to this train as well, because I didn't sit next to them. Once I got on the train, I just sat at the end. I didn't bother going to the front or anything. So I started to text. Again, nothing's sending, nothing's receiving. So I asked the train conductor again, because at the end of the day, we literally just went from one train to another. But because I was so paranoid, I wanted to make sure that I was on the right train. So I asked the guy like a couple of times, I'm like, is this the right train? He's like, yeah, just go on here. So I get inside the train and I see the screen, and the screen shows the cities that it's stopping in, and Osnabrück was not on there, and so I started to like freak out. As usual, this one guy who was standing next to me on the train was just like, what's your ticket? So I showed him my ticket. He was a little confused why the sign said one thing, but my ticket said another. So he was trying to get a hold of the train conductor and he was just ignoring him. Finally, he got out of the train, went to the conductor and was like, hey, this girl, her ticket says this, but the sign says that, what's going on? And then the guy is like, the ticket is right, this just the sign is wrong. And I'm just like, all the stress I literally had 30 minutes of sleep that whole time. I had no internet connection to text the other two people. Eventually we get to my stop at Osnabrück, and if you've been to Europe or if you've been to Osnabrück, it's a very interesting train station. The way it's designed is that the whole train station is like at a cross, rather than like a typical building or whatever. And to get to your next train or to next stop, you have to take the correct exit. And where I was, there was no elevators or anything like that. And I couldn't pick up my bags because they were too heavy. So I was struggling. I did not like this train station at all. But once I got off to Osnabrück, I found the other two people I was traveling with. So I asked the train conductor in this stop, I was like, hey, this is my ticket, where am I supposed to go? She goes, upstairs. And I'm just like, but where? Because like you have to take the correct exit and there's no like elevators. I don't want to just walk up the stairs and leave my bags because I couldn't really pick them up. So this guy, Dustin, that I was traveling with, he decided to go up to her and ask. And the people I was traveling with, they dressed like tourists instead of like locals. So you could tell they were American. And when he went up to the train lady to ask her the question, she literally closed the door on this guy. And I was just like, oh my God. And that was the first of many incidents as to how these kids and I were being treated because we were American, but it was a very interesting experience. So when we finally find where our train is, we go there and we wait, and according to our ticket, we had like less than 20 minutes to get to our next train. So when we sat there waiting for the train to come, there was no one else waiting, and we didn't know what was going on. So we sat there, we waited, 10 minutes went by, and then 20 minutes went by. 30 minutes went by, and then eventually 40 minutes. We were just like, what's happening? Is the train canceled? At that moment, my roommate decides to look up at the sign, because there was like a script or something in German that was like across the screen, and she has international data, and she decided after 40 minutes to translate it. And in the translation, it said that the train was going to be an hour late. We were just sitting there like, are you kidding me? We have been waiting so long. So we decided to just go take a bathroom break or get something to drink. I go downstairs to get something to drink, and the drinks they're not cold. European people are very environment eco-friendly, unlike us, and so when I saw that the drinks weren't cold, I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna drink it. It's fine. It's hot. I'm dehydrated, but this is all I have. And when we tried to go to the bathroom, you had to pay to go to the bathroom, and I didn't have any like coins. All I had was dollar bills. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna wait on this too. And keep in mind, none of us had like lunch or anything. So we were hungry, we were dehydrated, we were exhausted. It was hot outside, and the waters were not cold. We were just sitting there waiting. And keep in mind, at the last train, the one that I switched to, I was standing in a hot box. When this train came, all of a sudden, all these people showed up, and we had no seats. We were standing in a hot box as well. So we were just like, you know what? This is a 1 hour train ride. We can do this. And eventually we do. So we finally get to the city of Bremen. It's a beautiful, gorgeous, small little town. And we get there, you know, as you might have heard, we had a very long and stressful day. And so after we freshen up, to take a shower, my roommate and I decided to go and get something to eat. Despite everything that happened this day, I was shockingly really calm until I saw my roommate cry. When we went to get something to eat, I saw her cry because she was having culture stress. It was the first time out of the country, and like nothing was going right. And so it's understandable, but when she cried, it's like a switch went off in my head. Like all of a sudden my anxiety came back. Like when I was a little girl, my biggest fear in life was getting lost in a place I was not familiar with. At this point, I was in a new country, didn't speak the language, and that is when I started to freak out. So that is the end of the first story. The second story happens 2 days later, and because I started to freak out on the first day, I ended up having a breakdown, like I started crying and stuff. The second day, I was like sort of anxious but sort of excited, and then the third day comes, and this is where the second story comes. I had to go to school on the third day. Everyone that was in my hotel pretty much had a morning class, like a 9 a.m. class, and I had like an evening class. I decided to wait and just go by myself instead of going with the other students. The day before, I did look at the school. We did a tour of the city, but obviously I forgot. And so the third day, I finally got international data so I could use the GPS and everything. The school that I went to, there was like 2 schools with the same name. One of them was a science school and the other one was like an art school. And so when I Googled the name of the school, the other address showed up, and so I went to the other address thinking that it's the one that I'm supposed to go to. So I get there, and while I'm using the GPS to get to the school, I'm using a tram for the first time, like the public transportation. Prior to this, last time I used public transportation, I was like 8 years old, and so all of this was very new to me. I was starting to get like flashbacks of my childhood, sort of, but at the same time, it was just, I was extremely anxious because of what happened the first day, because this was the third day. So once I go inside the building, I noticed that everything looks different. I did visit the school the prior day, and the buildings looked similar, but it wasn't quite the same. So I thought maybe I went to like a different area of the building. So I went up to this woman who works there, and I was like, Entschuldigung, sprechen Sie English? She looks at me, she goes, sometimes, and I'm just like, okay. And then I'm like, do you know where this room is? She goes, of course I know where it is. All of us know where it is. We all work here. And at this point, I'm just like, just show me the room. It's okay. And then this woman gives me the directions in German. She tells me the directions, like left, right, and all of that in German. I have no idea what she's saying. It's like, I asked you if you spoke English so you could help me. Clearly, I don't understand German. So because this woman scared me, I just looked at her and I was like, Dankeschön, and I just left. And I found this woman that was very sweet with like a little girl. I'm like, where am I supposed to go? She's like, oh, you take the train and it's 1 stop over. And I'm just like, of course it is. Of course it is. So anyways, those are my stories that I'm sharing with you guys. There was actually a lot that happened on this trip. I got lost way too many times. I was followed at one point. People took pictures of me. Like, a lot of interesting things have happened, but I wanted to share these 2 stories because when you travel, especially for the very first time with people that you don't really know that well, things can go wrong, and it's okay, because the first story, when I was getting lost and almost missing my train and waiting an extra hour for the other train, in my head the entire time I was thinking, this is gonna be a good story to tell, and it was. I ended up telling this story to everybody that I met, all the professors, all of my friends, and they just said it was like a fun and crazy story. And if someone with terrible anxiety like me can handle this, and I guess other people can. But other than that, I do have more travel stories. I have been abroad a couple more times since then, and I do travel within the States as well. In the meantime, those are the two stories that I wanted to share with you guys. And sometimes when you travel, stuff happens, but you know what? You have fun, you learn stuff, and I got over my biggest fear in life, which was getting lost in a place I was not familiar with. Because 6 months later, I went to Dubai and I got lost and I was completely fine. I was not panicking, and guess what? I was found. So well, I wasn't found, but like I found where I needed to go, if that makes any sense. So thank you guys so much for watching, and please subscribe. I plan on filming more. I know this is like my second video, but I plan on being a lot more consistent. So yeah, please like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. Bye.